It's the Battle City dream, isn't it? That's what it's all about. No matter how much gamers talk to ourselves about our win-loss ratios, or our ladder climbs, or our event tops, it's the thing the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime and manga raised us with that we're truly chasing. The dream of an event so big, so open to the world, so incredibly produced that it brings together a global community tens of thousands strong to celebrate a shared love and joy for a game, to play together for hours and days, meet new friends, enjoy new things, experience things we have never experienced before, and when all is said and done, to cheer on the best of the best as we watch the greatest games in history brought to life by cutting-edge technology. But that's not really something we can ask of a game that's not even a traditional sport like football. The Battle City dream is just that, a dream. Right? And yet, when Konami announces that the best players on Earth are going to play behind closed doors at the 2024 World Championship Series in Seattle, when they start stripping away some of the most beloved ways that fans engage with the national championships, when the Yu-Gi-Oh! Championship Series, Yu-Gi-Oh's flagship event, starts to lose more and more coverage and disappears entirely from the European Union, it is worth asking, we can do better than this, right? Player experience and balance are obviously crucial to a game's success. But we also know that a game and its community can be made or broken on how lovingly the game is produced, how hype its events are. And part of the reason we know that is because there is a game that lives the Battle City dream year after year. And it is a game with one of the most grueling average gameplay experiences out there. And you're not gonna like where I'm going with this. Because today we're talking about the toxic teenager in the room, the game with the most commonly memed on and correctly maligned internet community on Earth. A game that, despite being legendarily awful to play, wins Esports Events of the Year awards basically every time it goes on stage. That's right, today we are talking about what Yu-Gi-Oh! Can learn from League of Legends. Hello, kings, queens, and monarchs of every element. I'm RJ the Jank Monarch, and I've been known to call League of Legends the best game nobody should play. It's got a lot going for it. It's incredibly skill testing, rewarding both mastery of fundamental mechanics and creative decision making. It's got a free-to-play format that is shockingly generous. It's a great way to hang out with friends if you got the right circle to play with, and it has an expansive, beautiful, interesting world from which it builds spectacular varieties of gameplay experiences and power fantasies. However, it's also severely punishing to new players, with few to no teaching tools and a notoriously toxic community known for being especially unkind to people they perceive as not being great at the game. It's also got a frustrating competitive environment with little room for casual play, and despite all of these things, manages to be extremely addictive. Sound familiar? Yes, it turns out League of Legends shares shocking similarities with the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game, both in its strengths and in its weaknesses, and I think comparing the two gives us some interesting things that we can study about how these games can be improved. Obviously, there are going to be things that I like better about Yu-Gi-Oh! Than League. I play Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, and I no longer play League for a couple of reasons. Number one, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a necessarily social game, which means that it's a little easier to regulate the community, and also it's just a great way to meet people and make friends. The competitive environment is consistent from bottom to top in Yu-Gi-Oh! In a way that it isn't in League of Legends, and it doesn't subject you to the mental health crisis speedrunning simulator that is the solo queue system. It's also got generally shorter games, which allows you to stop, reflect, untilt, and think about the ways that you could have played better between sessions, and also means that you don't necessarily have to jam game after game after game in order for you to get better at the game. In my opinion, it's just a better quality of life experience. But it's easy for me to talk about the game that I play and why I think it's better than the game that I don't play. What I'm here for today is to talk about how impressive some of the things League of Legends does, and how they're better than Yu-Gi-Oh, and how I think that Yu-Gi-Oh could learn from League to maybe actually chase the Battle City dream. Before I begin, a couple of caveats. You're about to have to listen to a person say very nice things about League of Legends. I know that exposure to a League player's opinion is a known risk factor for a number of diseases, but you're just gonna have to stick this out. Also, the compliments that I have for League of Legends aren't compliments for Riot Games and their executives, and certainly not endorsements of their business practices and the alleged ways that they treat their employees. I know for a fact that you can produce incredible events without, various forms of misconduct. Similarly, the criticisms that I have for Yu-Gi-Oh are not criticisms of the creatives involved. I imagine a lot of these people are incredibly dedicated to the game and want it to be the best gameplay experience it can be. I imagine most of these problems come down to executive decision making. So in short, if I say something good, it's probably about creatives. If I don't say something good, it's probably because executives were involved. And that's crucial to understand because the things we're talking about today have very little to do with the actual gameplay itself and everything to do with allowing the creative people involved to get absolutely high on their own supply and enjoy creating communication for the game, art and stories for the games, and especially the events for the games. So with that out of the way, let's boogie. It was one February morning in 2012 that Konami did something unprecedented. Kind of. What they were doing was releasing a forbidden and limited list, as something that's pretty standard for the Yu-Gi-Oh trading card game and is the general way that the game is balanced. And the new thing that they did is also standard practice for most video games, but for Konami, it was unheard of to release patch notes. Now, Yu-Gi-Oh players had been begging Konami for a semblance of communication for years, for some kind of insight into the way that the game was developed, what they want from the future of the game, how they treat their philosophy toward card design, and finally, we were getting the number one thing we were asking for, an explanation of how they choose cards to ban. There was just one little problem. The list that they were attached to was the infamous March 2012 list, widely known among Yu-Gi-Oh players as the most cynically blatant cash grab in Yu-Gi-Oh's history. It deleted several of the most beloved, older, and cheaper decks in the format and left the upper crust, which was toxic to the game and phenomenally expensive, not only alive and well, but utterly untouched. The patch notes were, needless to say, an unmitigated disaster. It was an entire article, and yet there was not a single word they could say that wouldn't ring untrue. They could tell us that Glow Up Bulb was too much of a plus, but Inzectors were right there producing like a +5 for cards in hand while destroying your entire field every turn. They could talk all they want about Trishula, Dragon of the Ice Barrier, removing a card from your field and hand, when windups could rip the entire contents of your hand from your grip before you could even begin playing the game. It was so deeply disingenuous that the backlash was immediate, and Konami right away realized their mistake and have never spoken to us about a ban list since. It is so bad that at this point, we don't even know when a ban list is going to come out. Sometimes the list will be released within a week of the first event governed by it. Konami is famously tight-lipped when it comes to their games, but when it comes to specifically Yu-Gi-Oh, the communication barrier is stunning. League of Legends, on the other hand, is communicative almost to a fault. Like, it is an entire meme in the community that Freak, one of the spokespeople for the dev teams, literally just won't shut up. Yeah, obviously they have patch notes. Their patch notes are pages and pages long every time they rebalance the game, but it's not just about that. Their events are planned out usually at least 6 months in advance, with fans knowing where to go, what tickets to buy, and generally what they can expect from the game. But also when it comes to the average gameplay experience, it's not just patch notes. They release articles all the time about individual champions and where they see them going. They produce quarterly videos about what they expect from the future of the game. They have specials where Vedius dresses up in ridiculous costumes and tries to make as much of a fool of himself as possible while explaining what you can expect from competitive League of Legends on every single patch. The amount of talking that League of Legends does with its players is absolutely spectacular, and it's not just the direct speaking from League, from Riot to its players. It's the fact that they have dialogue within the forums that the players use. They acknowledge subreddit posts. They comment on YouTube videos. They are there constantly polling the players, and all of that is not even to mention the public beta environment, the system by which players know in advance what changes are going to be made because they get to play them. In the public beta environment, any player in good standing, for the most part, is allowed to test out basically every change before it's been locked in, which gives the players the opportunity to give feedback back to the devs and see if they can break things that the devs didn't expect. Now, I don't expect Yu-Gi-Oh! To implement anything like the PvE system, and I probably shouldn't expect Konami to up their communication games to a Riot Games level, but I feel like we gotta be able to expect at least knowing when a ban list comes out. Most League of Legends players on Earth are pretty in tune to what's going on in the game and know what to expect from it, not just because they see what's coming, but also because Riot tells them what they're planning for the game. There is a level of infrastructure in place for League of Legends players to get involved in the production of the game, and I think that's crucial to producing the Battle City experience. In order to put on an event as big as the World Championship, spoiler alert, you have to be willing to commit the infrastructure and communication to get players to want to participate. And when it comes to players wanting to participate, there's one aspect of a game that rules above all else. It feels a little weird to say that a game based on one of the biggest hit animes of all time has a story problem. But if you think about it, although Yu-Gi-Oh's influence is eternal, its place in the cultural zeitgeist ended probably a decade ago. And the Duel Monsters anime, the thing that most people remember the game for, ended almost 2 decades ago. The game has developed and, in my opinion, improved since then, but as we move farther and farther away from the beginning, the story of the game, what you are doing as you are playing, what the idea is behind it, becomes more and more abstract. In the Duel Monsters era, you were emulating ancient sorcerers, summoning monsters and casting occult spells, and setting up insidious traps for each other to fight it out for supremacy. In the GX era, you were fighting for the duel spirits, the monsters that guided you, to self-actualization, to fortune, to fame, to whatever your future is. And in the 5Ds era, it was about forging new technologies and ideas to chase your future. And dueling was about finding your way out of the darkness. There have been animes in the Yu-Gi-Oh world since then, but as we go on, the game itself becomes more and more detached from them. When you look at the TCG landscape now, in Pokemon, the story is that you are a Pokemon trainer who catches them all and fights with your friends on the world stage. When you play Marvel Snap, you're part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. When you play Magic the Gathering, you're part of every other cinematic universe. When you're playing Yu-Gi-Oh, what's going on? What is the story of this game? There are obviously tons of stories. I don't think it's even that controversial to say that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the most imaginative game out there, certainly in terms of TCGs. You can play out the story of Diabelistar and Diabelle's unlocking the dark treasures of the sinful spoils and losing their innocence. You can play as Aluber and the Fallen of Albaz in their incredible world-breaking duel where they struggle to understand the powers that transform them into dragons by drawing on the landscape around them. You can play out the mind-boggling ecosystem of the cosmic fish, the Goaty, and on a nearby planet you can play Nouvelle, where a French chef and a burger flipper try to, hide that they're horny for each other and summon food demons. You can be basically anything within the world of Yu-Gi-Oh! And yet the game itself has no through line to identify itself by. I'm not saying that the Yu-Gi-Oh! World should become any less spectacular, but I think that it's worth our while to think about how a game develops its story as the game itself changes a lot. And in that way, it's very useful to look at League of Legends. The story of League of Legends has transformed a lot. In the very beginning, it was a pretty clear parody game in which you were one of the great summoners, dueling it out by bringing forth the power of great heroes, champions, that each have their place in the League of Legends. But as those champions released and their story played out, Riot realized that it behooved them to develop an entire world, the world of Runeterra. And Runeterra itself has also changed a lot over the years, and Riot is not afraid of totally retconning entire chunks of the story. And part of the reason that works for them is because every time they want to advance the game, they can create tons of art, stories, videos to express what it is that makes League of Legends special, to build out on the world. Yu-Gi-Oh! Had the incredible 25th anniversary animation showing many of the favorite worlds, and it also has the spectacular art books and a couple of comics describing it. But League of Legends has literally everything. They produce animated shorts and comics, but they also have music videos. They have short stories being released constantly, an interactive map on their website. They have sketches, they have fun facts and trivia, and oh yeah, that hit animated series they just came out with. Part of the way that League of Legends remains relevant more than 10 years later and after so many story shifts is they put so much into showing the world what they are. Even though I don't play League of Legends anymore, I am incredibly invested in the world. I read every single short story. I watch every single animated short because they've produced such a powerful story for the game that when you go to play the game or you go to play Legends of Runeterra or Teamfight Tactics or even watch the Esports, you have this spectacular world in mind that draws you in, that gives you something to connect to. When you watch Yu-Gi-Oh! Players play, you can obviously see the lore of the cards playing out, but there isn't quite that sense of connection to it. For sure, producing an animated series based on some of the lore would be incredible, but Konami could even chuck like $500 at a fan fiction writer and a sketch artist to write a story from the perspective of Diabelistar and draw a picture of, her crushing a monster energy. And do you have any idea how feral the internet would go for that? When I say that League creatives are allowed to get high on their own supply, what I mean is that you can see in their production videos, in the things where they talk about the making of, that they are invested in the projects, that they love what they get to create, and they get to create so much for the game. I wish that Konami would put that kind of effort into telling the story of what makes Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! So people aren't coming into it thinking Yugi and Kaiba are all there ever was to it. Yu-Gi-Oh! Tells stories that no other game has, and in some ways, no other game is capable of. But the real stories worth telling are the stories of the people playing it. Putting on sunglasses because whoever invented ring lights wanted me personally to die. I started making this video probably like 3 months ago, and the reason is because every time Konami announces something new about the way that Yu-Gi-Oh! Competitive events are being run, the difference becomes more and more stark for me between League of Legends, a game I don't play but am deeply invested in the esports for, and Yu-Gi-Oh! A game I play avidly but have trouble engaging with beyond my local circles. As you saw in my price discourse video, how you get players involved in a game has huge implications for how expensive the game is, how accessible it is, and how many people end up playing. Recently, especially with the changes noted at the beginning of this video, Yu-Gi-Oh! Events, the things that are supposed to be the reason why we care about the game, have gotten more and more lackluster. The coverage is dwindling, the live streams are disappearing, and the live commentary, although often very good and very clearly done by people who have a passion for the game, is betraying the fact that Konami does not invest in the on-air talent or experience of their game. And that is night and day compared to the experience of watching League of Legends esports. When you watch an even basic standard season League game, you can expect to see multiple segments talking about the game, talking about the individual players, telling the stories of the teams that are going to be playing on the stage that day. There will be segments planned in advance, oftentimes with silly, stupid, but often fun sketches. And the player hype videos. Oh man, the hype videos are incredible. The commentators are also voice trained, improv trained, and given carte blanche in many instances to decide how their persona is going to play out on stage. There's so much to follow in League of Legends esports. Yet from watching Yu-Gi-Oh! Events, if you aren't part of the social media experience, which you kind of have to be in order to access them in the first place, you wouldn't know that Christian Urena has solidified himself as maybe the greatest duelist of all time. The way Jesse Cotton shows up to an event and warps the meta, the historic run of Jessica Robinson and her unlikely plant allies. There are so many cool stories to tell about the events within Yu-Gi-Oh! And the meta that develops. And while I would hate to be the intern to have to write a profile for Christopher LeBlanc, there is so much that they could do to engage with that story that they have just left on the table, so there's nothing to grasp at. Every event seems like an individual event in which anonymous, nameless players play a format that the commentators don't seem to care about at all. How are fans supposed to follow something like that? I do because I'm on Twitter constantly, and the people who are playing who have those incredible stories have social media presences, are YouTube creators or streamers. But if you're not already deep in like I am, there's very little to go on. The events also look terrible. While the meme is that the first League of Legends World Championship was played in Freak's basement, the meme around Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that the most recent World Championship was played in the back rooms. The best players on Earth were playing on fold-out tables and paper mats. I would love it if Konami found a way to get the caster booth for its YCSs farther away from the people playing so that their casters can get hype. I've always gotten the impression that there's something like bubbling under the surface that they want to talk about, but they just can't because they have to talk like golf commentators. Meanwhile, over at League of Legends, their esports events contain fan meetups, they are advertised with documentaries and music videos with original music, and it all culminates in the World Championship Series. And when I say that they live the Battle City experience, I mean that for weeks, tens of thousands of players from across the globe come together and fill out some of the biggest stadiums in sports history to see their favorite players and teams play. The stories that they follow are incredible, and Riot produces spectacular television out of them along the way, and they are played out in some of the most cutting-edge gaming technology there is. Not just, the basic equipment that they play on, but some of the most spectacular HD screens, augmented reality, holograms, and stage production they possibly can. They chuck millions at the World Championship Series opening ceremonies alone, and their love for the craft shows, and the fans go absolutely buck wild for it. The League of Legends World Championship is genuinely one of the coolest events in esports, and they outdo themselves every single year with it. Now, part of the reason they can do that is because there is a ton of money in esports in a way that there can't be with Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! Makes most of its money that gets thrown around on the cards themselves, and while accessories are a popular market, you aren't going to be able to sell Yu-Gi-Oh! Players on the fastest gaming computer, or chairs, or headphones to hear themselves getting ashed on Master Duel. There is a level of money that goes into League of Legends that doesn't go into Yu-Gi-Oh! Or any other trading card game for that matter. But there's also very clearly a level of care that goes into it that doesn't go into Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm sure it could not cost Konami more than they're going to make from the hype that's generated from their World Championship series to make it look good, to make us care about the players who are involved and the story of what's happening on the weekend that they're playing. And for goodness' sake, allow people to show up to watch. This is such a frustrating comparison because I see so much potential in the world of Yu-Gi-Oh! People want to love it. There's a reason why people came back in 2020 from the pandemic to explore this world that we found when we were kids.
All right, folks, so here's the thing. I should not be making this addendum right now. I have an active case of COVID-19, as you can probably hear, but I needed to make this because we are approaching, it is happening tomorrow, the North American WCQ, and between when I wrote and filmed the majority of this video and now, a number of amazing things have happened that have to put it mildly, severely complicated the thesis of this video, to the point that you may have thought a couple of my complaints at the beginning of this video were at the very least outdated, if not a little bit silly, because I made this video to point out all these amazing things that League of Legends accomplishes with their game, how much they promote it, all the artwork that they create around it, the hype for the events, and how Konami could learn from those. And see, here's the thing, Konami has, over the last few weeks, just an explosion of changes to the way that Konami communicates with the audience alone has occurred. We got an announcement of when the next ban list is going to be. It is going to be sometime in September, the end of August. You may remember my talking about having promotional animations. They created the Mimigools. The Mimighoul animation. A really cute, short little video. I wouldn't say it's like Warwick cinematic quality, but the Mimighoul introduction video is cute and fun and is a genuinely good time and has made me want to build the Mimighoul deck. And they created a promotional video for the Infinite Forbidden in which Jerome and Billy were very clearly just having a good time with the promotion. They had smiles on their face that seemed genuine, and when they were explaining each of the themes, they each seemed very excited about it. It was evident that they weren't having to toe some kind of company line when it came to how they talked about this product. They just had good things to say about it. Not only that, but a lot of the complaints about events have started to get turned around. We're getting European YCSs again, and the North American WCQ is happening tomorrow and has a great looking stage. Wait, it's probably actually happening today because I've seen the stage. Being sick does crazy things to the mind. The stage looks great. That's why I brought it up. The stage for the feature matches looks phenomenal. It looks great on video. I haven't gotten to see much of the stream commentary yet because it's like 9 a.m. on a Friday and I called out sick from work, but I'm very happy with where that's going. And even more importantly, they brought in guest actors for a live duel. This is one of the most beloved parts of attending NA Nats. The Edison side event has 350 people signed up for it. That is bigger than most regionals. And I'll tell you what, people are getting excited about it. I've seen my Twitter boots, although they've been kind of dooming about the format, talking about how much fun the new decks that are coming out of Infinite Forbidden are, how they're receiving kind of renewed excitement for the game. The promotional videos are a lot of fun and are bringing people back into wanting to play paper in a format that I don't think people would have wanted to play otherwise, with the confidence that in just a month or so, we're going to have a ban list that may be able to fix the problems that we have. And I think most excitingly of all, we've gotten a survey from Konami asking the community if they want to see more animations like the 25th anniversary special. And goddamn, of course we do. So although I planned on having this video end on kind of a disappointed moment in the game that I play, I actually get to end it on kind of a hopeful one. It seems like Konami America might actually be picking up on what it takes for a game to be successful on an international stage in the long term, and the TCG as a whole is taking off. I need to be clear, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is not dying in any sense of the term. Yu-Gi-Oh! Breaks its own records for event attendance basically every single year and is continuing to do so. People love this game, and I'm glad to see that people at Konami are really getting to show that they do too. I'm hoping to see a lot more of this.
Anyway, all this is just to say that I want an Albaz anime. Thanks!
Okay, so it got better. While I was hitting export on this very video, I got to watch the stream for the North American WCQ, and here's the thing. Steve Kangas, is it Steve or is it Steven? Kangas was hosting the event, and he made a call to action for one of the number one things I talked about in this video. What Steve did was he asked for the players to submit suggestions for competitive player stories that they wanted to see. And he did them. He talked about player stories. He told the story of this event and of the year of Yu-Gi-Oh! So far. And when I got to talk to him a little bit on Twitter afterward, he told me something really cool. He, as a League of Legends caster, noticed that the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game had this huge space to fill for player story in this incredible competitive environment, and went to Konami and suggested that this was one of the very things he wanted to get to do with Yu-Gi-Oh! Casting, and he said that they've been extremely receptive to that, which is awesome to hear, because what that does is that fits into this idea, it fits into this growing picture that Konami is becoming really, or is building, is opening up a lot of space for creative storytelling and promotion in exactly the way that we've been talking about in this video. And I did not want to let this video close out without giving a shout out to Kangas, without giving a shout out to the rest of the on-air talent today for the amazing North American WCQ that they put together, and also just to say how exciting it is that a league caster noticed this exact same thing that they wanted to do, but also, more importantly, that Konami is making the space to increase this type of creative storytelling and communication. This paints such a cool picture for competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Going into the future. I could not let this video end without talking about it. Anyway, bye.